What are we in for in the fight to make the whole Mueller report public? Let's bring in Chris Daszak, former senior investigative counsel for the House of Representatives and former assistant attorney general with the New York State Office of Attorney General. So, Chris, Mueller, as we just heard, provides a confidential report, goes to Attorney General Bill Barr. Barr can produce a summary, and you know what's going to happen. Everyone's going to want to read between the lines. They're going to demand to let it all out. They'll be looking at anything's redacted, you know, what's behind there. I mean, this thing is going to get, questioned up the wazoo.
You're right, Eric, and they're going to look between the lines. So I think what's going to happen is, rather than after it goes to Attorney General Barr, and he certainly has the legal authority to decide what he releases to Congress, but I think what's going to happen here, and this is related to what you said about reading between the lines, Congress, if Attorney General Barr decides not to release the report itself and just a summary, Congress will, and I think should, issue a subpoena for the report. If they issue a subpoena for a report, the key thing is obviously to redact anything that's classified. But other than that, this report should be public. The American people paid, I think, approximately $25 million for it. There were serious allegations made, and one way or the other, everybody should know. This report could turn out to show the allegations were that the president or people who work for him were somehow involved with collusion with the Russians. If that's the case, and this report demonstrates that, then that can be pursued one way. At the same time, it's important for the American people to know if there's nothing like that uncovered, and after almost 2 years and $25 million, if there's no evidence of that, the American people should know that, too. And again, that could be obtained through subpoena by Congress. You know,
critics will say, is there a collusion illusion, or is, in fact, that meeting in Trump Tower, where Don Jr. and others out there meeting with the Russian lawyer, representing the government, as the email said, in support of Donald Trump for president, you know, how Mueller will come down on that, or whether or not that was, in fact, a meeting of collusion.
Exactly. And the only way to get to the bottom of it is not the read between the lines, as you said, Eric. It's, you know, the American people, they can read the report themselves and make their own determination. So with respect to that meeting that you're referring to, or any other issue, including the Steele dossier, the role that played in this investigation, because he came out recently and said he didn't even confirm certain aspects of the information that ultimately found their way into a FISA warrant. So this isn't just about one thing or the other. This report should really shed light on everything rather than guessing games and rumors.
And when you say everything, would that get into the funding of the Steele dossier? We've heard a lot about the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign and Perkins Co., you know, behind some of this, and supposedly the FISA court not being told about that.
Sure. That's a key issue. When you go to the FISA court, a federal judge, and you ask that federal judge to listen to the conversations of Americans, that's a serious matter. And if part of that was based on information that was politically derived or derived for political purposes to hurt someone, then that should certainly be known.
Meanwhile, this is not the only investigation ongoing. You have several others. Here's what Congressman Harley Ruda said about that.
The Mueller report is only one of 3 investigations going on right now, and it's focused primarily on what transpired during the campaign. You also have what's going on in the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of Virginia. So we tend to focus on the Mueller report being released and that's going to answer all questions. It's not. It's one of 3 major investigations going on.
Yeah, some say the Southern District, the federal investigation here in Manhattan, is the most important because they're looking into the Trump organization, businesses, and allegations of Michael Cohen, you know, testifying that the Trump organization inflated assets on insurance forms while deflated for tax purposes, and some speculation that there may have been some hanky-panky in that Deutsche Bank a mortgage in terms of your assets. You served in the Attorney General's office here in New York State. There are charges already from the Manhattan District Attorney's office that have been filed against Paul Manafort. What type of pitfalls are for the president in the future for this? Because you can't pardon out of that one because it's a New York State or local investigation.
You're right. And the pitfalls depend on what the substance, if any, is during these investigations. But the pitfalls, if the Southern District of New York uncovers any information about financial misdeeds with respect to whether it's the inaugural committee or any real estate deals, then there are obviously pitfalls. And as you pointed out, Eric, if the Manhattan District Attorney's Office pursues this case against Paul Manafort, there is no pardon. The only one thing that everybody should keep in mind is any information that comes from Michael Cohen has to be independently verified. He's an admitted liar. He's going to prison for lying, and he clearly has animosity toward the president. So it's okay to follow up on his leads, as you have to in a government investigation, as long as that information is verified by either independent documents or independent witnesses.
Well, the reports say that Deutsche Bank is cooperating, so wouldn't this all be in the paperwork? Wouldn't there be a paper trail if there was something wrong, or if it is all kosher?
Well, there would be, if there is something wrong, or if it's kosher. Either way, you would have a paper trail, and presumably, because if they do have Deutsche Bank's records, I've reviewed very sophisticated bank records for investigations that I've handled when I was in the government, and they're extremely detailed. Deposits, withdrawals, transfers. So there would be a paper trail, and it should be easy enough one way or the other to get to the bottom of it.
And finally, Chris, okay, your prediction on when we're going to see the Mueller report. I mean, everyone for weeks have been saying it's almost there. Andrew Weissman and others, I mean, they're peeling off. The investigators and the top officials are going back to private practice and law schools to teach. That's got to be a pretty good tip-off that it's really winding down.
I'm comfortable, Eric. I'll make a prediction that the report itself will be released, and if I had to guess, I think it's going to be released through Congress via a subpoena. In terms of the timing of the release of it, that I wouldn't guess, because as you know, they've been saying it's going to be released in 2 weeks just in public, not Mueller's team, but they've been saying it's going to be released next week for at least a month. So there's no telling when it's actually going to be released. And the only guy who knows is Bob Mueller.
Yep. And he, I guess, ain't talking.
He ain't.
Chris stays there. Chris, always good to talk to you. Thank you for your insight.
President Trump fired back one day after the House voted 420-0 to make the findings of the Mueller report public, insisting there should not even be a report. Here now is Ken Starr, former independent counsel under President Clinton, a Fox News contributor and author of Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Good to see you tonight. I want to start with what it looks like when people start to wrap things up. You pass things on to Robert Ray, whom I've had on my daytime show. And so I just want to know, if you're doing things like the lead prosecutor, Andrew Weissman, going on to other things, that was announced this week. But oppositionally, you're putting resources in to fund this probe by Mueller until September. So what does it look like? What did those things mean to you?
Well, it means there's still wrap-up work to be done. Apparently, he is clearly in a phase-down mode. But it takes a while. It takes weeks and perhaps even months to bring everything to conclusion, get all the sentencing done, and so forth. And, of course, he owes this confidential report to the Attorney General. So there's work to do.
So is there any doubt that we're going to get to see that? I mean, did anybody listen to what, at the confirmation hearing, what William Barr said, our new AG, has been AG before, so he knows people are going to be listening and writing down his words. And he said, look, I have a good relationship with Robert Mueller. Reportedly, that caught some people in the White House by surprise. And he was sincere about how long they'd known each other and that he fully intended to release it according to rules and regulations. So why 420 trying to get to see it if he already said he'd do it?
Well, it may be because folks are starting to read the regulations, and the regulations bind Bill Barr until he says, I'm doing away with these regulations. The regulations, as you know, Harris, require the special counsel to just present a, quote, confidential report. That's a key word, isn't it? To the Attorney General. Then under the regulations, and these are regulations that have been in effect for 20 years, and they go back to the Clinton years, those regulations then call upon the Attorney General to notify the Congress with an explanation of certain actions that he took. The regulations under which Bob Mueller was appointed do not contemplate a report to Congress. So it's sort of, oh my goodness, we have apparently just not been aware here at the House of Representatives that there really is no genuine reporting requirement. Now, we'll see. The Attorney General is very able. He's got a lot of discretion.
All right. I want to get to this real quickly. March 5th, John Brennan said Mueller's last indictments could come Friday, which that was 2 weeks ago. Let's watch.
I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, this week on Friday, not knowing anything about it, but Friday is the day that the grand jury indictments come down. And also this Friday is better than next Friday because next Friday is the 15th of March, which is the Ides of March. And I don't think Robert Mueller will want to have that dramatic flair of the Ides of March when he is going to be delivering what I think are going to be his indictments, the final indictments, as well as the report that he gives to the Attorney General.
Woo! 10 days ago, former director CIA reading some tea leaves that I must have put in my teapot. I mean, how could he get it so wrong?
Well, it's speculation, and he obviously does not have the gift of prophecy. His prophecy did not come true. And I really do think it doesn't serve the country, the American people, well when people sit around, and I try to avoid making these kinds of, frankly, idle predictions. It maybe gets viewership interested, but it's not a public service.
Interesting. Ken Starr, thank you for your perspective and expertise on this. Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you, Harris.